Hi there, my name is Amber Weller, and this here is my masterpiece. I chose to make fermented yogurt, and I'm gonna get to this at the end of the video, but it actually turned out really well, so I'm kind of excited about this. Excuse me. So to get into everything, yogurt is a cultured food, which means it relies on live microbes, and it uses two strains. I hope I'm gonna say this right. It's Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus. Those are the microbes involved in this. Basically, the process is that lactose is fermented to create lactic acid, and that's probiotics. So what happens is the lactic acid decreases the pH of the milk, and that's what causes it to clot and thicken and create the consistency of yogurt. And as it makes it more acidic, it thickens the proteins and prevents colonization of other microbes, so that aids in preservation. I definitely didn't get as involved with this, but when some places make yogurt, they'll use stabilizers they'll help create firmness and prevent separation of the whey. I didn't do that, but that is a thing that they do when they make yogurt. But what I had to do is, I have another jar of this. I sterilized the jars to make sure that I'm using clean everything, so there aren't other microbes or bacteria, things like that would interfere and mess up this process for me. So you do that first, and then you use high heat to pasteurize the milk. It'll denature the whey proteins and prevent separation of water during storage. So I did that right, I think, because it turned out really well. And the high heat also reduces the number of spoilage organisms in the milk, so that it becomes easier for the starter cultures to grow. So that's another reason for the high heat. As far as oxygen, so there's no oxygen needed for the fermentation of milk to make yogurt. So this is like an anaerobic process, and since this jar is airtight, that really doesn't change throughout the process. You just don't need oxygen, and there shouldn't be any getting in as it's actually fermenting. And there's no alcohol either, because I didn't use yeast or anything. The only way that there would be alcohol would be if some other bacteria present in the environment during my process were to happen to somehow get mixed in. But as far as the actual culturing yogurt, there's no actual alcohol involved in the bacteria needed for that process. So no alcohol. Temperature. So there are changes of temperature. Obviously, you use high heat during pasteurization, and then you need to keep this warm. So my apartment is actually I keep it at around 62 degrees, so that's a little bit too cold. So what I had to do is wrap the jars in a towel to try to trap the heat, so that the fermentation process could go on and it didn't slow down, because the lower the temperature, the longer it takes, the fermentation process takes. So I used a towel I didn't want it to take longer than 12 hours, which is about the time that it should have taken. And the reason for that it takes longer is because of the reduced activity of bacteria, and it takes longer to reach the required pH level. So I was trying to avoid messing that up by using the towels. And then carbon dioxide. So CO2 is naturally occurring in milk, so there is some involved in this process, but it's also CO2, if you add some places when they make yogurt, they'll actually inject it with CO2, and that increases the shelf life. I did not get that involved. So there's CO2 that's naturally occurring in milk, but I didn't actually add any throughout the process, so that really didn't change. But anyway, so it took about 12 hours as I had them wrapped in towels, and then you cool it after the fermentation to stop the fermentation process. I refrigerated this for 3 hours before trying any, and it's actually very good. And to be honest, I was kind of skeptical, because things tend to go wrong when I try to cook. So I thought that I probably had some, even though I sterilized my jars, there would be some kind of issue, or it just wouldn't set up, or the consistency would be all off and not taste like yogurt, not feel like yogurt, but it actually turned out really well. But as far as making it again, I probably won't, if I'm being honest. It wasn't difficult, I'll say that. And when you think about how much time you actually spend doing the work, it really isn't that long. It's just like the process of waiting 12 hours, which I mean, I went to bed and everything, but it's just like you kind of have that gnawing on your mind, like I'm not done with that. I need to finish it. So because of that, and then I have things to clean, which is half the reason I don't like cooking so much, because I don't like to wash dishes. So I wouldn't make it again just because I don't want to hassle with it. And I think about it, I'm like, well, why would I make it when I can just go buy some at the store that, I can get any flavor I want, it'll taste better, and I don't have to do any of the work. So that's the only reason I wouldn't make it again. But as far as the way it tastes and the way it turned out, it's actually pretty good. So I have to give myself a little pat on the back for not messing this up. And I think that's about all I have. I don't know if anybody else chose yogurt. If you didn't, I hope you learned something, because I definitely learned a lot. Thank you.